Hello everyone, welcome back to the Highland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. I've got another marsh pitcher plant spotlight for you guys. We're touching on a species that I probably won't have available for a while, mind you, but it's a very, very cool species, quite sought after because it's got some really weird characteristics. This is Heliamphora folliculata. It's one of the moderately large species out there, not the biggest group, but also quite a bit bigger than things like minor pulchella, even Exappendiculata. These guys come from what is called the Aparamon Tepui group. That's a set of 4 table mountains in kind of central Venezuela, give or take. It's on the northeast side of the Table Mountain Range that's found through Venezuela, Brazil, Guyana, and it's found just east of Ollantaytambo, where species like Heliamphora minor are found. This guy grows on all 4 of those table mountains in the group, and this one in particular comes from Murasipan Tepui. And they grow only on the tops of those table mountains at elevations between 2,100 and 2,700 meters. So roughly between 6,500 and almost 9,000 feet in elevation. So quite high up there, where it's constantly cool, very wet, and when the sun does come out, it is blazing strong. So these guys are adapted to habitats that are very, very tough. The temperatures rarely rise above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, even when the sun is bright and blazing down. And for most of the time, they are getting torrentially rained on and growing amongst relatively short vegetation that is just barely managing to hang on to a little bit of soil because everything else gets washed off by those rains. So in places like cracks in the rocks or around pool edges where mosses and debris have collected, that's where these guys will start growing up. Now this species can produce pitchers up to about a foot tall at full size. This one currently has pitchers that are roughly about 7 to 8 inches tall. It did have a couple bigger ones, as you can see, when it first arrived, but those are starting to die back, and it's starting to acclimate to new conditions. It's a very, very slow-growing species, I have found, so expect only to get a new leaf or so every couple of months at best. So as you can see, these new leaves, it's been here for about 6 months now, and it's only produced a couple new leaves and a couple new growth points, which I'll talk about in a minute. But those pitchers tend to be fairly stocky. Down in the lower, generally third to half, it is very slender funnel-shaped plant. And then above that, usually, the pitchers become slightly funnel-shaped to broadly cylindrical. And they have kind of this indentation on that front of the top of the pitcher there, and then a slightly broader mouth. Now, up the front of the pitcher, they have this slender wing, the ala, that grows up here, and right where it goes from that kind of slight constriction where the plant transitions from funnel shape to cylindrical, there's a little drainage hole actually right there. So with that constant rain coming down, these guys have a way of getting rid of excess water without washing out everything that they've eaten before. But then above that, it closes up again up to the mouth. Now, a very happy plant, you may see this whole thing, it may be bright green with a little bit of red tinge around here and on the nectar spoon, or you may get them flush, almost solid maroon red in some cases. I'll be switching out the lights underneath where this guy is sitting sometime in the next couple of months, so I will probably be able to share it turning that brilliant red color again. But the most distinctive trait of this particular species is its nectar spoon, and that's where it gets its name. Now, I will show an up-close video on this in particular because it's very, very strange. The nectar spoon is actually kind of embedded mostly in the side of the pitcher right here. Just kind of the forward half, or tip to maybe third, sticks out over the mouth of the pitcher, and the rest is kind of embedded in the side. But the interesting part is that the nectar spoon itself actually forms a little hollow cup because it actually dips down behind the back of the pitcher here. So if you look inside, there's a little lip there, and then there's a hollow that continues down behind there. Nectar collects in there and is one of the things it uses to attract insects. Now, why it's got that little pocket there when other species just have a little overhanging helmet that protects the nectar, not entirely sure. but it kind of puts this species kind of intermediate in structure between things like Exapendiculata, which have a fully embedded nectar spoon, and the other more typical species with the overhanging little spoon on a neck. Uh, so that's a very, very distinctive trait on this plant. Now, again, as I mentioned, these guys are very high elevation plants and very slow growing, so they can be quite difficult sometimes to grow in cultivation. You require very, very high light. Now, they would take full sunlight if you could do that without getting them too hot, but that's usually difficult. So, as strong an artificial light as you can provide is good. Anything that goes above like 5,000 lumens plus, and preferably full spectrum lighting as well, is good for them. Uh, and keep that only maybe a few inches to maybe a foot above the plants if you can. If you have much brighter lights, of course, that can go higher. You want to keep it relatively close in order to give them as much light as you possibly can while still being able to maintain relatively cool conditions. Because for these guys, preferably, you could grow them at a constant 60 degrees Fahrenheit and they would be happy. But otherwise, if you have temperatures that start to rise up 70, 75, preferably don't reach this point, but even 80 degrees, you then need a much cooler nighttime period in order to offset that and not have these guys collapse. One reason why this particular plant still has relatively few pictures on it is that it was received in the middle of summer when things were still a little warmer than preferable here. And so a lot of the older pictures kind of started to collapse and die off before it really settled in and got new roots. You want to grow these guys in a very loose, open soil, but that retains quite a bit of moisture. So like a loose one-to-one pea or long fiber sphagnum and perlite mix. Maybe even add more perlite or pumice to keep it really loose, but so that it can hold a lot of moisture, but also allow those roots to breathe. And then they need plenty of moisture, but you don't want to ever have them really truly sopping wet because you don't want to accidentally cause anaerobic conditions and make the roots rot. You want to be able to let those guys breathe through. And if you do feed these guys, it will allow them to grow a little bit faster and maybe produce a little bit better color. It might make them flower more frequently as well. But like most Heliamphora, these guys do not really produce their own digestive enzymes, or if they do, it's only one or two, like a protease, and they rely mostly on bacteria, commensal insects, fungi to actually break down what they catch and absorb the nutrients from that. So in cultivation, since we don't really have those mutualistic organisms growing in there, you want to give them maybe like a light foliar fertilizer, very dilute liquid fertilizer into the pitchers, and that will allow them to grow up. Now, if you have a nice mature plant and it's been growing for a little while, you may be lucky enough to see it flower. If you check out some of the other videos I've done on Heliamphora already, you'll see videos of those flowers. They're these very tall, thin stalks. Out in the wild, they'll grow upwards to about a foot, foot and a half, and then kind of arch over for another foot or two. And the base of those, oftentimes there will be several bracts that will produce almost full pitchers off the sides of the flower stalk. And then as it goes up, you have more normal kind of folded leaf-like bracts out of which form individual flowers. One stalk may produce up to 12 or more. And those flowers, they're very simple. They have tepals rather than petals and sepals because the two structures basically look exactly the same. They're indistinguishable. So they kind of mix the name of the two. And those guys, they will start off very bright white or pinkish in color. And just as they open, the female parts will be receptive. But then as they open fully and the flowers start to green out, the anthers will then ripen after the stigmas have already stopped receiving pollen. So if you want to produce seeds, you have to take pollen from an older flower and put it onto a just newly opening flower, hopefully, and then pray that you are lucky enough to get them to actually pollinate and set seeds. I have not yet been successful with these guys in doing that, but we keep trying. If you do get seeds, like everything with these guys, the process is slow. All right, so a plant like this that is producing mature pitchers is probably going to be between 5 and 7 years of age minimum, and the big, huge genets that you may see in the wild could be centuries old. The seeds, of course, are exactly the same. They may take several months to sprout, and then the seedlings will take 3, 5, 7 years to start producing even mature pitchers. So it's definitely a test of your patience to deal with these guys. But if you're lucky enough and you have the right conditions and you have that patience, they are a very beautiful and very unusual plant to grow. Now, that is all that I have for that species right now. Certainly, if there's anything that I've missed or questions that you have, leave them in the comments below. Make sure to like this video, share it if you know somebody else who would like to learn about this species. Subscribe so you don't miss anything coming up, and that also helps boost the channel as well. If you'd like to learn more about the plants and animals that I work with here, you can find more photos and video tidbits on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. at Carlton Carnivores. I also have the blog and database on my website at carltoncarnivores.com. And if you would like to help support in a more financial manner, because producing these videos, taking care of the plants and stuff is a costly, time-consuming endeavor, you can buy some of the plants that are available at the website shop, or become a Patreon member where you get early access to the videos, exclusive merchandise, access to the monthly seed contests that I do for you guys, and a few other kickbacks as well. You can also do one-time donations at places like Ko-fi or directly through PayPal if you don't want to do a subscription thing. The links for most of these things will be in the video description below, so make sure to check those out. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.